commission is sick. Yeah.
So out of high school, I went to.
I have a couple just basic. I mean, I have one.
Printed it.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening. We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call. Do you have attendance?
Take attendance first. Mayor Devine,
I am here.
Amanda Nowak,
Here.
Wayne Clark is not present, John Keckeisen,
Yes.
Aaron Hearn,
Here.
Eric Torkelson, not here, Tom Rubstock,
Yep.
and Brian Frank.
Yep.
Okay, we have a quorum.
All right. Move to item C, approval of the minutes from our meeting on May 29th.
Approved.
Second.
Any adjustments or amendments to the minutes? With no Wayne and Jim, you guys are gonna have to step up today on the motions. All right, if there's no changes, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to items 2A and 2B, which will be taken together.
Thank you, Mayor. Items 2A and B, which we'll take together, are the special use for proposed behavioral health hospital, and also the site landscaping architectural plans for the same. UHS, Universal Health Services, is interested in purchasing this land from the Community Development Authority. They've submitted their application back in May, and we've since then had a neighborhood public open house at St. Augustine's Church on June 13th, and that will be followed by was followed by a Community Development Authority meeting on June 19th. Tonight's Plan Commission meeting, and which will be followed by another CDA meeting, which will be a public hearing on the sale of land, consideration of sale of land to the to UHS. Ultimately, this all comes together at a public hearing before the Common Council, July 16th. So, but for tonight's purposes, the Plan Commission are going to be reviewing the zoning, and then also the use and operations, and then also the site landscaping and architectural plans have been submitted by UHS. With us here at the table, Diane Henneman of UHS, and also Brian Randall. And then in the audience, we've got other parts of the team, Mary Claire Lancer and Stengel Hill, Bob also with UHS, and Stengel Hill and also Harwood Engineering, so are all in the audience. So they're all here tonight, representing 2A and 2B. And I guess at this point, before we begin, I'm going to have UHS and Brian give an overview of the operations, and from which we'll get into more specifics of site landscaping, architectural, and our recommendations. So, turn it over to you guys.
Thank you. And did you want to launch our?
They think we have too many slides. I just want you to know they're fine.
That's okay.
I told them we'll talk fast.
Do I just click the?
Yeah.
Oh, the arrow.
Or you can just click the screen as well. Either way.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm Brian Randall, as Steve introduced me, and with me here at the table is Diane Henneman. We put all the other names up there. Steve did a pretty good job with his quiz as far as who we have. Bob Denny from UHS is here, although Diane will give most of the presentation with me. Mary Claire will talk a little bit about our community outreach. And then the architects from Stengel Hill, Mark Spees and Darren McKinnon, as well as then our local civil engineers and landscape architect Tom Olenichik and Tom DeSalvo. Our topics tonight, we really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to present our idea for the redevelopment of the site at 68th and Mitchell. And we recognize that it's a large site and it's really important to the community. So our roadmap is to really touch on the site history and the process. Diane will talk about UHS. It's a new company to this area, what its history and background is, and how they will operate a hospital and what type of hospital will be at the site. We've taken a great deal of time and a lot of effort to reach out to the neighborhood and hold the open house, as Steve talked about. So Mary Claire will give some details on that. And then we'll have the architects and, if needed, the civil engineers talk about the site plan and the building design for you. And then we have the staff recommendations that we can put up on the big screen. If it's okay, I'll start. In my role as a local attorney, I do a lot of zoning and land use work, and so UHS came to me with the idea to redevelop this site and really wanted a local person and a partner to help with all the applications. And like Steve said, we hit the May 31st deadline with a variety of applications, and we're kind of bouncing around from city agency and commission. So we are trying to bring it all together for that final approval in front of the Common Council. On the left is kind of the broad view of the neighborhood. In red at the center is where the site is. and a slightly closer one is on the right. These images, actually, Mary Claire Lancer asked the architects to generate so that when she went door to door, she could orient everyone, people could find their house, and really talk about what their questions might be as it relates to this site here in the community. And at any time, we can come back to slides as needed, and particularly when the architects talk about the plans. I think this was in the staff report, so just real quick, a high-level review of the background of the property. It's been an industrial site for many, many years, and the city ultimately in the mid-2010, 2013 started to think about redevelopment, and that private property group did bring down the buildings and start remediating the site, and the city has owned it since 2016 through the Community Development Authority. And so the city, I think, in its role as a steward on this particular site, is looking to make sure it's redeveloped in the best way.
Brian,
Absolutely.
if that little thing is in the way, you can actually click on the white portion and then just drag it out of the way.
Oh,
It's- yeah.
excellent. Okay. There or off the screen? What is
That's fine.
What is your pleasure?
As long as it's not in the way.
The property is zoned M1 manufacturing, consistent with that industrial heritage and the legacy, and we're actually not proposing to rezone it. Under the zoning classification at the very bottom, we can apply for a special use permit. So I believe that's 2A, yes, 2A on the agenda tonight is our application for special use permit. Just for reference, and the zoning code gives about 2 pages of permitted uses. I picked a few just to give you some bullet points. I'm not gonna read them all, but it's what you would expect for an M1 manufacturing district property. Those are permitted use. They can simply come to the city, file plans that would conform with the zoning code with setbacks and the like, and go through any building plan review like our second item, but those are permitted uses. The special use, as the commission knows, is something where on a case-by-case basis, the commission has to review it and determine that it's an appropriate use based on the factors that you apply under that ordinance. The zoning code really incorporates by reference, we go all the way down to the C3 community commercial district where we find hospitals in the list of special uses. The C3 then is incorporated by the C4 regional commercial district, and then the M1 special uses incorporate all those. So that's how we get to a hospital on this site. And that was actually one of the questions a lot of the neighbors asked us, what is a special use, and if it's M1 zoning, how does a hospital fit? So that's the sequence, and I think it was helpful for the neighbors to understand that, and just wanted to explain that for you tonight. Steve already kind of talked about the timeline. We've put together what we think is a very robust and complete set of plans, and the application materials were filed late May, had that open house, and the couple of weeks of outreach preceding that. Mary Claire can talk about the details. One of the days, that first Saturday in June was a little rainy, storms came through, but I think there were a lot of good conversations that occurred that day, and then the following Saturday as well as some of the evening weeknights. We were very happy to have the opportunity to do the open house June 13th. Steve was right in having said that. A lot of these boards that you're seeing on the sides, we had that night, and again, Mary Claire can go through the details. We're in some ways at the middle of the chronological part of the process, but we really have the very important meetings start with votes starting tonight at CDA and Common Council coming up in July. So Diane and the architects, they look forward to traveling to Wisconsin here, the best time of year that we have for weather and the like. The rest of the project, and pull that white box down, we'd like to be in doing site work and construction activities yet this year. Certainly there are a lot of high-level building plans and other design that'll have to be completed, but really it'll be a 2020 full year of construction, weather allowing, with the hospital to open in 2021. And one of the things that UHS is committed to doing, and we've told the neighbors this, that before we actually have patients in there and we activate the facility, we're gonna have an open house probably around the grand opening time, and people can tour it and see what the inside is like and really what that internal functioning will be, so that they recognize and they see what's going on in that facility across the way. With this, I'd like to hand it off to Diane, and she can tell a little bit about the UHS background and who they are and why they want to invest here in the city of West Allis.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. As Steve said, I'm Diane Henneman. I'm a divisional vice president for UHS. So I oversee our hospitals, about 16 hospitals in 7 states in the Midwest. I'm from Michigan. I live just outside of Detroit. I've been a CEO in our behavioral health hospitals. I used to run a 240-bed hospital that was about 20 miles outside of Detroit. So I'm a social worker by training. I've been in this business for my entire career, really, and I've been with UHS for quite a while. UHS is really one of the largest providers of behavioral health care services in the country. We operate acute care hospitals as well, ambulatory centers across the United States. We're in 35 states, as well as in the UK. As you can see, we employ 87,000 people. We've treated 600,000 behavioral health patients last year, 2.6 million patients altogether. And we have been involved with Milwaukee County now for a couple of years. We went through a very collaborative and thorough due diligence process with them when they were looking to find a partner for their operations. We were chosen to be the provider for them when they ramped down and closed their operations. And our goal really, we're not in Wisconsin, we are in almost all of the surrounding states, but our goal really has been to build a freestanding behavioral health facility here to treat both those patients and the community at large. Our assessment is really there's a significant lack of behavior inpatient beds for the community. We've done a pretty thorough assessment of that, and within a 40 to 60 mile radius of West Allis, there's really the region's underbedded for everyone: children, adolescents, adults, and older adults. And that's really our area of expertise. We have a 40-year track record of working in the behavioral health world and a strong commitment to doing so, and going through this process for the last couple of years, responding to the RFP, being awarded it, and then site selection, we've landed on this site at 68th and Mitchell.
And so one thing just to punctuate, Diane, and I know a lot of the staff asked for us on the third bullet point, is that the 120-bed hospital will be a full-service hospital for referrals from all types of medical providers in that behavioral health, but you will have the Milwaukee County referrals as well. So it's not just a Milwaukee County facility. It
Yep.
will be a new independent hospital.
Correct. We anticipate serving children, adolescents, adults, and older adults. The county anticipates, they have about 40 patients with them now. They anticipate needing anywhere between 16 and 20 beds on any given day once the hospital is up and operating. So obviously, we're building a much larger hospital because we think there's a need in the community that we can help fill. And it's an acute care hospital that we're not providing any long-term treatment. We will have partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient services, although that's a smaller portion of what we do. Our main focus will be on our inpatient program. There's been confusion related to the psychiatric crisis redesign, and I think initially when the county put the RFP out, they were looking for someone to do that as well, and it's completely changed. But just for a point of clarification, we're not doing the psychiatric crisis center it's not our intention or plan, or they're working through a whole project themselves to figure out where that space will land once the county closes its operations. Brian has our average length of stay, which is about 10 days, when you combine children and older adults in our facility. And we spent a lot of time in the open house and some of the community and individual meetings just talking about the discharge planning process and how we ensure appropriate discharge plans, safety plans, transportations to and from the hospital for our patients. So I think there were some misperceptions. Potentially people could just be let out of the hospital and not just there, as maybe similar to what you see in shelters and other kind of more community-based programs. But that we have a hardwired process in all of our hospitals where we confirm and verify anyone who's leaving the hospital because the doctor said they're ready to leave. Their transportation is verified, and we provide transportation if they don't have transportation that they can access on their day of discharge. I talked a little bit about we'll serve kind of the full continuum of ages. We have specialty programs throughout the country, so we will look to bring some of those core competencies to this hospital, and we expect our referrals to come just like in any other state, all of the area hospitals, outpatient therapists, primary care physicians. In all of our hospitals, we are a training site for students. We typically have the full continuum of graduate students doing internships and trainings with us, so nursing students, social work, pharmacy, rec therapy, and that would be our plan here as well. We anticipate having between 250 and 300 employees when we're fully operational. Our hospitals are all staffed, obviously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day. Like, there's no holidays when you work in healthcare, so, and then there's just some information about the average wage average wage rate and what we would anticipate at, I think that was year 3 or year 5, our payroll totaling. The building is designed to be, as you can see from the renderings, 83,000 square feet. It's single-story. We've done a lot of collaboration around the landscaping and, the look of the building. We anticipate it costing around $33 million. It will be 120 beds, which is 5 distinct units, so 1 child and adolescent unit, 1 older adult, and then 3 general adult units. And we typically in our hospitals build some of the things that you see listed there: gymnasium, outdoor activity areas, outpatient facilities. As Brian said, we hope to begin construction by the end of the year and open in 2021. And then, all of our hospitals are designed, which the architects will talk more about, really with a best practice related to safety and optimizing the environment. So that's a balance between lines of sight and ease of monitoring patients in a completely safe an environment as you can create when you're doing a new build versus sometimes trying to operate in an older hospital. And, incorporating natural light and courtyards and things like that. So it's a therapeutic environment as well.
Thank you, Diane. And again,
Sure.
we can come back with questions at any point on any of these topics. I'm going to give up my seat in a moment to Mary Claire Lancer. I only have 1 slide for her, but she has a handout, so we'll replace slides with handouts with her. Mary Claire can talk about the community outreach program. Mary Claire?
Hi. So application was made on May 31st. On June 1st, we started visiting neighbors, starting with those who live closest to the site on 68th Street. As typical, I introduced myself, clearly stating that I'm hired to provide information and will respect whatever people have had to say to me. This is how I do it. Super low tech, 1 index card per household, and my associate was also doing this, so she's got a stack about as big as this. This is the information binder that I had with me, and I would inform people that what I have here is the actual application. I'd be happy to show them as little or as much as they care to see. I told them I'm not here to razzle-dazzle anyone, just making sure that they have access to correct information so that they can, put together their opinions. It was really interesting for me to find how many people said to me, I have someone in my family who has needed behavioral health. Certainly never asked them. I'm a nurse, so it was interesting for me to hear that. I told everyone about the information meeting, the open house that we're having on June 13, and invited them to that, either handed them the yellow invitation, or if I didn't find people home, and on 68th Street, I tried twice. If I didn't find people home, I left the invitation like this on a door hanger. There's really a lot of rental properties in this neighborhood, so I, especially when there were 2 units per building, I would go around to the side or the back and make sure that everyone, if I could get access, that they had one of these. So altogether, by the time I was finished, we talked with people, Chris Korjanek and myself, talked with people at 106 homes. 241 homes just received this invitation. And then I was going around and I talked with a property owner who I just happened to know who does not live on site. And he said, Mary Claire, when would I as a property owner hear about this? And I thought, not until the public hearing. So immediately I first class mailed 108 of these invitations to non-resident property owners. And I know that they received them because if I look at the totals for who came to this, it was mostly owners. So I'm really glad that they were made aware. So then on June 13th, that's a really cute picture. So altogether, 455 invitations were distributed or mailed for this event. And we were clear that it was an open house. That said, some people really were there for the entire 2.5 hours. And so 40 people signed in, and original sign-in sheets are in the possession of the city. 22 people completed exit questionnaires. Those are the yellow the yellow cardstock on the back of your packets. And some of them asked for a follow-up phone call. So those are in process, as well as anybody who had questions at the door-to-door. By the way, for some of these door-to-door, especially for people who live nearby or who are just really very interested, I offered to read back their comments for their approval. And some of these cards are front and back. People appreciated the door-to-door. They felt respected by it. A lot of them kind of changed their opinion as we were talking. I would always lead to say, I'm here to talk about a hospital that's proposed in your community, in your neighborhood, behavioral health hospital. So I really feel like some of the comments people had on here, some of the comments people shared with me, that they understood it and had the information that they wanted. I was hoping, because we really had quite a lot of cookies from Aggie's that night, I was hoping that more people would show up at this, but I think what might have happened is that when people saw that this is the same thing, I told them, this is the same thing that will be described, but we'll have all kinds of more detail and people to make explanations. I think a lot of people felt, and some said to me, okay, I got it, I'm good with this. And then I asked people to hang on to their invitation. I said, this is me at the bottom. If you have any questions or anything follow up on this, maybe you don't know who to call at UHS with your question, just give me a call. So I'm continuing to stay in touch with anybody who wants to. And as Brian said, it was a huge benefit to be able to say to people, once this is complete, before patients are admitted, because of course their privacy and treatment needs to be respected, we will have an open house and you can come and see, and it'll take some of the mystery away of what's happening here. Also, people were interested in employment opportunities, not just physicians, nurses, social workers, but people were saying, you know, I'll be interested in laundry, food service, janitorial stuff. So there was a lot of interest in the neighborhood to kind of wrap their arms around this. Any questions about the outreach? Brian, have a seat back.
No, that's great, Mary Claire, thank you. And almost everyone who's here tonight and presenting, Bob, Denny, Diane, they were at the neighborhood meeting. I think in the picture I see Darren and Mark Spees, who's sitting down. Tom Olenichik, our civil engineer, I was there. So we really had our full team for that open house as well. Mark, if you just hit one of the buttons, I guess it'll just move to your slide.
Okay, so I'm Mark Spees with Stingo Hill Architecture, one of the architects that's going to be working on this project. So Darren's also here with Stingo Hill, and we've also got Tom and the landscape architect as well, so we can answer whatever questions you all might have. I'm just going to give you all kind of a high-level overview of the project, so go through some site plan stuff, some of the renderings, and then touch on some of the staff comments that we had with this initial submission. So this is to get everyone, and these are really excerpts exactly from our submission that we made to the city, so some of this stuff's not legible down here, but you all don't need to see that for this purpose of this. But this is to get everyone oriented, this slide right here. So everything that you've seen before is true north, so now we've rotated everything to the right, so it's a little bit disorienting. So this is actually north here now. 68th Street is along here, and this is West Mitchell. Railroad tracks along there. More railroad tracks up here, and then this is an auto detailing facility up here, this large.
There's a one tenant
portion of
there
them.
is a very small portion.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so that's just to get everyone oriented. Parking along the front, along 68th Street here, some additional staff parking up along in this corner, and then obviously the shaded area is the building footprint itself. This is just a more zoomed in view of that same, again, more detail within our site plan submission. So I know this is not a floor plan iteration. That's not what we're here to review, but I'm just going to give everyone a high level overview of what's happening inside the building without getting into the weeds of exactly where stuff is. But we've worked with UHS across the country on many of these de novo projects. So we've worked with their clinical staff, their risk staff, all of their operations to kind of optimize this basic layout. So that's why the building geometry is as such. Typically from this line up is the patient care, the true on-unit patient care areas. So each one of these, and Diane said there's 5 distinct units. So there's a unit here, there's a unit there, another unit here, one here, and one here. So it's very symmetrical and repetitive in nature, and that's to allow the care to switch between, you know, as census grows based on patient population, they're able to flex and respond to those patient needs. But how this works is there's a nursing core and activity spaces kind of in this area, and then these patient wings here, that's truly where the patient sleeping rooms are. So patient rooms here, nursing core around here. And then usually we group all of their activity, group therapy spaces kind of around this core space. All this front area up here is more of the base support functions for the facility. So we've got the admissions department is over here, then we've got some administration components, so all the office functions are in here. We've got, she pointed out there's a gymnasium, there's a half-court gymnasium, plus some activity therapy spaces for art therapy, type stuff that happens in this area. There's a small outpatient clinic here for kind of that, to complete that continuum of care. Once they're discharged, they come back for additional treatment through this outpatient program. There is a full kitchen and dining facility inside this space, so full commercial kitchen, and then patients dine in this area. And then this is more back of house support, mechanical, electrical type functions back in here. This is another part of our submission, so someone touched on that we've worked with the city back and forth, very much so prior to the submission, to try to get as much landscape and greenery as we can on this site. The building is taking up, you know, this area here, so we've tried to buffer as much as we can, and this is kind of that initial submission of showing where all the, you know, landscaping essentially is, pulling back off the street here. We've softened up this corner, kind of the main focal corner of the facility here with a lot of landscaping. All these notes then correspond to, and we'll work with the forestry department as far as we identify exactly what tree and bush, you know, all the way down to every single planting that's on here. So that's what this is to illustrate. These next couple ones are just our exterior renderings of the building, again, that we work kind of back and forth through many phone calls and conversations and meetings with the city to kind of land on this aesthetic for the building. There's some details that we'll still work out with them as we continue to work, but this will give you definitely a general flavor for where we've landed. So this is kind of main focal corner, 68th Street here, West Mitchell along here. So this is showing an image of kind of the main entrance of the facility. So this is where all those entrances will happen along this corner. This is at that other 68th Street is along here. So this was that main entrance down here. So pulling along that parking lot here, just another view looking back at the facility. This is that clinic entrance, so the outpatient clinic entry, and this is where the building pops up here for that gymnasium piece in here. And then this is, so that those two just gave you kind of a general feel for the aesthetic of the building. This is zooming back out, so now you can get oriented back with the floor plan. So again, 68th Street along here, West Mitchell along here. So from a bird's eye view, admissions component here, that administration office components in there, the activity therapy with the gym, outpatient support services and dining and stuff back in here. And then you can see the patient wings are off in the background here. So kind of going along 68th Street as well, just another view. This is more kind of back of the house, loading type area will happen back in here. So more deliveries and stuff will happen behind this screen wall. Swinging back around from 68th Street to the back of the property. So here was that staff parking lot back in this corner. Bird's eye view looking back. This you're going to start to see the outdoor activity yards that Diane mentioned. That one of the benefits among many of this overall geometry of the building is that every unit has access to the outside directly from the unit. So all patients, I mean, that's obviously a very therapeutic element and part of their curriculum as far as treatment is outside activities. You know, you can have therapy sessions kind of outside, but also just a general activity and blowing off steam, et cetera, inside these activity spaces. These are all fenced in areas, and I'm sure other folks will have some comments and questions about, we've gone round and round with the city, what does that fencing look like, how tall is it, et cetera, so you can start to see a little bit of it in here. Swinging back around railroad tracks here, West Mitchell Street here, so we're just swinging around the overall building. Here's a patient wing that's sticking out here and looking back through some of those activity yards. Okay. And again, we're going through this, that's a lot to take in, so we can bounce back to whatever those slides we need to when we're done here. So these were the staff recommendations based on the submissions that we have, so I'm gonna touch on each one of these briefly. We've talked offline with the city about all of these as well. This first one here I'm gonna skip over, because this is really the only one that we have some additional conversations we'd like to have about, so I'm gonna come back to that one. But basically, all these other ones, we don't have any issues or concerns, but I'll just touch on them briefly. So this is more just a clerical plan of just telling exactly what type of tree and bush and et cetera that we're gonna plant here. That's just more of a clerical thing that we will provide that information. Additional green space being added to the off-site parking lot. So this is that space across the street that the city and UHS are currently kind of negotiating here. I'm gonna back up here because I didn't show that. I glossed over that. So it's this space right here. So it's currently kind of a blocked off parking lot right now, so I think it's intended for parking, but it's in such disrepair that, I don't think anyone can even have access to it right now. So they're negotiating now as to what do we do with this space. Is Universal Health Services going to include it as part of the purchase? So that's what the current plan is, and the staff comment was like, hey, can we add some more greenery to the space? And yes, we will work with them to add more greenery to that, so we don't have an issue with that.
That alley, by the way, is closed off to the neighborhood, right?
Yes, that's correct. This one here, so again, City Forestry will ultimately approve the landscaping plans. We acknowledge that and we'll work with them on that. This is one portion of the gym. There was conversation between Steve and I about exactly what the material is on that one small piece of facade. It's still gonna, the predominant material of the building is all masonry, whether it's some cast stone, some true modular face brick here. This commentary is just kind of delves into more of that aesthetic of exactly what he wants to see here. So we've already started that conversation. That's a fairly easy one to resolve. Window transparency, another detailed commentary that's more of a clerical issue, is clarifying one of our exterior elevations, just making sure it's a true window that we're showing on a plan north elevation. And we agreed that yes, it is vision glass and windows in there. G is, so the renderings themselves show color and material intent. They want clarification on exactly what color and exactly what material will be on the facility, which obviously makes sense, and that is part of our process. Anyways, as we're working with the contractor that's hired and selecting the exact, bidding out products, et cetera, that we will provide that information, say, hey, it's gonna be manufacturer X and it's gonna be color Y. So we'll go through all of that with them. So that's fairly typical. The next one, exterior building elevations. So this was a clerical thing of making sure north is actually north and not plan north. So that's, we'll fix that. That's just a paperwork thing. And the next one is house shield options being provided for light poles. So there's a lot of commentary about, is this parking lot lights going to spill into the neighbors across the street? And we've as part of our submission, we have to submit photometric plans that are calculations of, hey, there'll be 0-foot candles from this far away from the pole. There's just an additional element you can add to the light pole itself to help shield the bulb essentially, and that's an easy one, and we don't have issues dealing with that either. So I'm gonna jump back up to the one that we do take issue with, and we would like to kind of get this one removed. And we've talked offline about this, but I'm gonna just touch on this. So that the staff's comment is they would like this entrance off of West Mitchell Street removed and just more landscaping put here. Our opinion is that it is necessary to have to facilitate the proper flow, vehicular flow through our parking lot area and access for patients and families and visitors to get this to this facility. So currently we've got an access drive here and an access drive here. The idea is that this helps to disperse, so you don't only have access off of one street, we now have access off of two streets. So that's why we would like to make I don't know if the formal word is make a motion, but to essentially try to get this and leave this access drive as we currently have it drawn here. In addition, It's helping with our fire truck access as well, so if we were to close that off, a fire truck should, heaven forbid you have to come here for this, but you're pulling in off of 68th Street, you have to, they can't, this is a drive under canopy here that they wouldn't go under, so they come around kind of this roundabout here, and having access off of here, either way, you're pulling in and pulling back out as opposed to having to back out as well. Other comments, so this, continuing that staff commentary. So this is talking about an estimated cost for landscaping. So we have to, as part of the submission, all that landscaping stuff that we show, we have to get an estimate of it's gonna cost X. And then they're asking for a surety bond that we pay as part of the construction process to ensure that what we say is being designed and planted is going to be planted. And once it is, then that bond is released and give it back. So that's fairly typical, and we don't have an issue with that as well. Common Council's approval of the special use, so that's an obvious one as well. That's kind of what we're here talking about. Documentation showing compliance with the city of West Allis, so that's just stormwater management, and they have to ultimately approve it as well as part of this condition. Last two are, this is after, so it's after it's actually built, so within 1 year, planning commission approval, signage permit plans being provided for staff review and approval. Yes, we will go through that normal process. And then compliance with, blah, policies relates to repair. Basically, the way I understand it is if we mess up the sidewalks, we gotta fix the sidewalks, which again, makes sense. You wanna touch on this one, Brian?
Can I first just hear a
Yep.
continuation of the staff comment on that one issue that you disagree on?
Sure.
Just kind of an explanation of why you believe that shouldn't be there.
Sure, so on page 4, I mean, maybe go back to that picture of the site plan, but
This one?
yeah, there's also a basic site plan on page 4 of the staff report. So staff's opinion is that closure of this driveway would lend itself to a little bit nicer corner view from 68th and Mitchell as it faces the intersection. There is a redevelopment area to the north. What I think some of it referred to as the historic Kearney Trekker building is that we're actually soliciting some proposals, or we have solicited some proposals for that building and reuse of that building. So we're eager to ensure that it's a very nice looking landscape corner. No doubt they've added quite a bit of landscaping from where we first started, when we initially had conversations with UHS. But we feel that closure of that driveway wouldn't necessarily reduce the function of the existing driveways on 68th Street. Yes, it does provide another alternative to the north, but we feel that just adding a little more curb appeal or landscaping to that Mitchell Street frontage would be beneficial for not only the site but the overall neighborhood. I should note though, our city engineer has not, as part of our technical review comments that we ask for when we send out these plans for feedback from different departments, our city engineering department did not recommend that driveway be closed. It's more of our planning, recommendation to you, so.
Thank you.
We're gonna kick this one to me, not a problem.
Yes.
We recognize that item number 3 on the agenda is, of course, related to this, and that's the Plan Commission's role in the sale of the property process. That's,
Brian, is this number 3?
yes.
Oh, well,
We're not ready for that one
We're
yet?
not up on that yet.
All right,
Yeah.
so we won't
Yeah.
talk about that one,
Take on
and
2A
we'll say
and
thank
B
you.
first, yeah.
Smooth.
Thank you.
So that concludes item 2A, 2B. Is there any discussion, any questions? Aaron?
So what's the difference between this hospital and like Rogers Memorial Behavioral Health Hospital? Because I'm very familiar with that, so I'd just like to know the difference between your hospital and their hospital. Is it similar, or, I mean,
Yeah, I don't intricately know the details of their hospital, but I think it's fairly similar. It's a freestanding behavioral health facility. They serve a little bit different populations, maybe. I think they have an eating disorder focus for some of their units, but fairly similar.
so would patients be staying the night for, like, because I think they have actual bedrooms where patients stay the night for a couple
Yeah,
days or?
exactly the same.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Okay, okay.
We anticipate like 7 to 10 days for most patients, yep.
And will you be working with like the schools and stuff and?
For children and adolescents, yep, and I think there's some requirement to provide some educational services as well. Again, kids are there, you know, it's a short length of stay, it's not a long-term program, but you still have to obviously work with, meet whatever requirements.
Are the units, like separated between adults and
Yep,
children units?
there's 5 units, yep, so you couldn't really see, we don't have the unit rendering, do we, on the board?
On a board, actually.
Maybe we
if
could
you
put
want.
that up, that might be
I had
easier.
it handy in case.
Yep, there's 5 distinct 24-bed units, so, like if you just look at that, here, let me just, do you care if I just go up there?
Come on up,
Okay.
go ahead. Or I can go up there and point.
So this is the nurse station that, Mark was talking about essentially, and these are the patient bedrooms. So you would have a nurse station here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 really different therapy activity rooms. And then the patient rooms are all down here. Your, like, consult rooms to meet with a physician or a social worker are here. Here's a group therapy room. And that, so this is one unit, and then there's another unit here. It goes to here.
Is there a
And then-
security door between those units then?
Yes,
Yes.
we can't mix the children with the adults.
Yeah. And
We
you don't-
we never mix them.
You don't really mix patients from any unit, you know, so, yeah, it's all separated by doors. And it just repeats, and then like here's the gym he was talking about, the dining room.
And so there's a separated female, male unit and stuff like that. I
We
guess
don't
is what-
always, in different state markets, we do it differently. We don't always separate, I mean, we separate adult men and women by bedrooms certainly, and sometimes hallways. We don't always separate, men and women on units, but sometimes we do. It depends on the patient population. Sometimes men tend to behave better when women are on the units. Sometimes it's safer women feel safer when there's no men on. It just depends really on who you're serving and what's the primary diagnosis you're working with. And so we would decide that. We have enough space because we have 3 adult units that we have flexibility there, so, yeah. The older adult unit is separate from the other adult units because usually there's more, you have accessible rooms and there's more mobility issues with those patients.
Any other questions?
So on the staff recommendation, you know, we're recommending approval, subject to items, you know, 1 through 7 of your staff report. The one item where they have some issue, I guess, planners issue with is the item 1A, the removal of the driveway in Mitchell. And we are recommending that from the standpoint of aesthetics and with the future redevelopment across the street. We want to ensure that, you know, I guess that intersection looks good.
Sorry, is that how big the corner's gonna be, really?
Uh,
Picture, I mean, is
yeah,
it gonna be
this-
that far away for that driveway on Mitchell, would that be a?
Yes, and that's an accurate rendering of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely, the
Pretty far
proposed
away.
driveway is definitely far enough away from the intersection, so engineering does not have an issue with that driveway. It's just,
Okay.
you know, it's more of a, staff's opinion is that it's more of an aesthetic recommendation. Functionally, we think, we also think that the parking lot could work with the 2 driveways on 68th. Certainly does offer another option, to enter and exit from the north. But I guess we're focusing on aesthetics, curb appeal of that north side.
How wide is that driveway, just from
I think it's maybe the actual approach, maybe like 30 or 24, okay.
feet? Okay.
Right, if I can just add too, because I've been working with Mary Claire quite a bit in that outreach, and I don't think Mark touched on this, but we know that the neighbors expressed some concern just about now 200 some employees in a facility on this location where it's a vacant site right now. What's the traffic going to be? So we think the neighbors might be concerned about access only on 68th Street. Certainly there are a lot of good things to the east of us with the farmers market, places where people may want to go exiting our facility or where people may be coming from. So with what Mark said, we've been talking to staff about this, we've had a good dialogue, and I agree with Steve, maybe from a planning perspective, just by itself, sure, it might be nice to add more landscaping, but as we've, on our side of the team, peeled back the layers of this, from a functional perspective, both for our visitors and in the parking lot, to the fire safety, the access for the large fire equipment that may occasionally come to the site, to impacts and respect for the neighbors, and we don't want to unnecessarily push traffic toward them, as well as it's really only a 24-foot driveway, and we are landscaping heavily in that area. I think it balances all together, and that's why we're asking that the Plan Commission not include that particular condition as part of our approval. We've worked really hard, and it's almost like we're on the same page with staff, but there's that one issue, and that's okay. That's why we wanted to bring our side of it to you, and we appreciate Steve explaining where the staff is on that one.
I vote for approval.
A motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second, any other discussion on the motion? Is the motion with staff recommendations fully, or?
I would say, personally, I don't think there's a problem with the driveway if it's got that much to it. So,
then would it be removing
we,
item 1A from the staff report
yes,
in your motion?
yes.
And are you okay with that? Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to item 3.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
This is all I have from
Yep,
your staff
I
report.
don't have much idea other than what's in the staff report, but so, with the sale, the CDA, is going to be considering the sale of land. They've had one meeting already, on June 19th, and then the, public hearing before the CDA will be on the, 9th of July. But the Plan Commission has to, basically all this item amounts to is the plan in conformance with the master plan for the city? And on page, can I borrow them out? Yeah. Sure. Page 9 of your staff report, let me get it. Page 9 of your staff report has an image with our 2030 comprehensive land use plan. The land use designations here range from low-density residential, which is this lighter yellow color, multifamily, which is an orange color. This is the subject property in this area here, which is industrial and office space. So it is, the land use is industrial and office, which is, in terms of zoning, the property is zoned manufacturing, which is supportive of hospitals, as is the land use designation. So there's no, I guess there's no barrier or obstacle from the zoning or land use standpoint. And that's, therefore, we're recommending approval of this item, council approval of this item.
I'll approve.
Motion to
Second.
approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Who's got item 4? Waterstone? Give him a minute.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
See ya. All right.
I'm not lying, because when I was a kid, my dad told me. Then he went to
Leaving.
Miller, and then he was there for 2 years.
Like a fire drill. All right, we'll move on to item 4. There's no B, correct? Just 4?
Well, that cleared out.
Item 4. Katie.
Cleared
So item 4 is for approval of a site landscape and architecture plan for what will be Waterstone Bank on National in front of the Target. And Al from Waterstone is here, in case you have questions for him. So they're proposing to do some minor building alterations. They're also doing interior renovations, but that's not really in our purview. They're going to be removing the non-conforming pole sign that you can see in the top photo, updating their landscape plan. This is zone C4, so banks are permitted use, so there's no special use required. It's just approval of the site landscape plan today. So the primary thing that they would like to do is to remove these dormers from the roof to make it look less like a house and more like a business. So their staff put together some just photoshopped images of what that might look like without the roof, or without the dormers there. And they will also be replacing the shingles on the roof, as well as adding new storefront windows. The aluminum, they're currently wood and apparently rotting a little bit, so that will be a good upgrade. And they're adding a walk-up night deposit near the entrance, which is, on the side that's facing Target, not on the side that's facing National. So looking at their site landscape plan, they're definitely making improvements on that front, and also proposing to put in a new monument sign that will also have the required landscaping around that. They're going to be enclosing their refuse containers, kind of tucked behind a corner of a building there. And although the sidewalk is still shown on this plan, I recently spoke with Al, and it's cracked and doesn't look super great right now. So what they actually would like to do is to remove that entirely and just have it be grass and landscaping, I believe, near the building. So he'll submit some revised plans to reflect that at a future date. They're also going to be adding new signage to the building, but that's not part of their approval. It all conforms to our code, so it doesn't need to go through any sort of special approval process other than staff processing of their permit application. So we recommend approval of this. We do need to have a larger site landscape plan. The existing plan doesn't show the parking lot or the property lines, but they do have enough parking spots, including the handicap accessible spots. And so we'd also like to see a revised landscape plan to show the removal of that sidewalk, and just to get some details on exactly what the materials or what the color and the provider of the materials for both the windows and the roof are, as well as our regular estimates on bond requirements.
Could you go back one slide?
Sure.
I just have a crazy glare on that upper right side. Thanks. Oh, I knew that was gonna happen. Okay, any questions? John?
So they're gonna get rid of the sidewalk. Are they getting rid of the front door? Because there's gonna be no access then from somebody walking by the front of it to get into the bank, because I didn't see anything that goes to the side.
Sure. So this is actually the main entrance.
Yes, the rear, yes.
The rear, right. So this one where the sidewalk is an emergency exit. It is not used by customers.
So are they gonna keep that door there?
So the door will remain, yes, but
Okay.
as a
We're
correct.
proposing to replace it with a glass storefront door.
Okay, I'm just saying it would look kinda odd, that's all.
Right.
I would think.
Our
Okay.
current West Dallas building has two doors that are fire egress from the building. Part of it, the main two-story building, there's one that exits on Greenfield Avenue, that's just a steel door out of the basement.
Mhm.
And then on 101st Street, we've got a glass door that's just a fire exit out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Aaron?
Does staff think that removing those, I'm sorry, I forgot what you called them now, but.
Gables.
Gables, thank you, from the building really makes it look better? I fear that would take away from what the building's appearance. I mean, I think it looks quite nice with those gables.
Yeah, I think it's more a matter of personal preference, so
We were thinking the building was kind of odd to begin with at that corner in front of Target, and Piggly Wiggly, and you get some larger, like regional commercial shopping centers, and then there's this house that looks like it belongs in Orchard Hills or something, right?
But I know with
Yeah.
Walgreens, we really try to step up our game to have the best looking Walgreens, in
Yeah.
municipalities. And so when I look at this building, I think, oh, we really made them step up their game, And so now it's like we're taking that away, and we're taking away a quality that I think was actually quite nice for the city of West Allis in a building.
I agree with Aaron. I feel like, can you go back to where the dormers were removed? It just looks kind of like a big, like, monolith. Like, there's just nothing to it. I feel like it has, like you said, like something more to it when you've, I understand it looks a little more like a house with the, but
Now go
it's,
back where the sign, where they're gonna put the sign up though.
One more.
Wow,
I don't think that makes it look any better.
I mean, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, with those in the way, the sign's not gonna grab the attention like that one does.
that's the back side of it though.
This
Like,
is
I
the back
wonder
Yeah, that's
what
the
the
other
front
side.
is
But
gonna
they're
look
do the
like.
same thing on the front side,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, right? I
But
mean,
there's no image of the front with,
right, but I
no-
mean, if they're gonna take those out, it's still
what are
gonna
they
be.
called?
I think it's just the color of the roof that you're getting from these pictures. That the blue sticks out more.
Would you like to add anything to this?
We'd really prefer to get rid of them because we do feel that the structure does look like a house. That chimney that you see on the northwest corner is just a fake chimney.
Right.
I mean, so
It's supposed to bring charm, though. That's why you do things like that to buildings.
we
It brings
recently
charm.
purchased 3 of these buildings. The
Yeah.
one in Oak Creek does not have the dormers. The one in Milwaukee, I don't think it does. Yeah, no, I think that one does have the dormers, but it also has 2 chimneys on it. We just think it takes away from the professional look of the building, makes it more look residential to us.
But for a bank, don't you kind of wanna bring, I don't know.
I make a motion to approve.
with dormers or without?
Without,
I'll second.
with how this proposal is.
Okay. And there's a second by
I'll
John.
second,
Is there
yes.
any other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Weigel?
It's only because I spent the whole day today with the Main Street people talking about multimodal transportation and integrating it. First of all, I didn't know that wasn't a front door. That front door wasn't a door. So the design of this is, no one walks to this, essentially. Everyone drives in their car to get there.
Which is not what we're about,
Not what we're supposed to be moving toward, not what I don't think we're supposed to be moving
right?
toward. I'm not telling her, I guess I didn't know that was not that's an exit, emergency exit only currently, and the interior design of the building doesn't support that as an entrance, is that correct?
It could, but from a security standpoint, we prefer not to have.
I'm not gonna argue about security in the bank, it just, yeah, this seems like a camel building,
If
you
it
know,
were
was designed by,
Built today as a bank, it wouldn't look like this.
no, I-
We'd probably see something much more like
Associated.
Associated or, BMO, whatever, I mean, those types, but, yeah, and I'll admit, I mean, the front door on this building right now, which is actually an exit, you guys are proposing a glass door for some transparency,
that's gonna look even more like a door then, I think,
True.
isn't it?
which I think sort of fits the whole
Isn't that gonna
urbanist idea.
The charm, right?
What's the
In an ideal
closest-
world, though, I mean, we'd have a much more, I guess, charming streets and, or there'd be more pedestrian movement in this area. There just isn't much. It is dominated by traffic. Not to say that we shouldn't be designing for that for the future, but I guess if this were a new building, that would allow some, I think, better options for accommodating, what you guys are.
Is that a bus stop out there?
Yes, it is.
So somebody came there on the bus, got off, they have to walk around to the,
With the days I've spent there in the past month.
nobody comes in the bus.
Nobody comes to the front door. We got a lot of people walking through the front yard to go to Target or Piggly Wiggly. We've had.
I'm sorry, is that
occasional-
currently open right now?
No, it's under renovation right now.
Then why would anybody go there from the bus?
Well, we had a lady yesterday show up to use the ATM. There's no bank signs on the building right now, but I did have a lady show up and try to use an ATM that's non-functional.
But I'm just saying that nobody's coming from the bus stop,
Right.
if people are getting off though there, they might choose that as a bank and then be able to, especially people who can't drive cars. We have a lot of those people here in West Allis who are using the bus constantly.
And John thanks you.
That's John.
It's
All
a
right.
classic challenge of a building, the building does front the street, you don't have the parking lot in front of the building, which is a good thing. But it's that challenge, if your parking's gonna be behind the building, those people majority of people that come here are using the drive-through or parking, they need to walk in the backside of the building, that's where the main entrance is. The front is just a solid door with a sidewalk, but it's gonna be locked. I guess they're intending to put a glass door in, which would offer some more transparency and remove the sidewalk. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world though, I mean, if they were redesigning this from ground up, it would look much different. What they're doing is adapting an existing building to an existing setting, site layout, and set of conditions, so that's a whole different challenge in starting from scratch.
So what's before us right now is a motion to approve with removing the dormers. Is there any other discussion, or should we take a vote?
Let's take a vote.
Take the vote.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
3 to 2.
Okay.
Motion carries.
I'm gonna check out that door.
Yes.
Well, right inside that front door where that sidewalk we're proposing to the right is actually the vault room, which from a security
Oh.
standpoint, being right on the road,
Who
you
put
know.
that there?
Whoever built the building.
Yeah. All right, so that'll conclude item 4. And we will go on to item 5.
Item 5, what we have is CSM for 1137 South 62nd Street. Combining 2 parcels, 1200 block South 63rd and 1137 South 62nd Street into one parcel. The reason being, the owner, she has to park in front of her house here, and wants to have off-street parking, so for our code, in order to create off-street parking and build a garage, it has to be one lot. So she is proposing to have a driveway come off of 63rd Street, and the garage will be built back here. There's an existing concrete slab that's gonna be torn out, and the garage is gonna be placed back here. She's gonna have fencing around the property here, landscaping. She's gonna have a garden, and have a gate right here to access the driveway up to her garage. And she has purchased this one vacant parcel, by the way.
Of note, just one thing I just caught, is that fence that she puts in her, because it is a double fronting lot, she's gonna have to have that fence set back at least 20 feet. Can't be within the front yard. But that's a separate.
John?
I have a question. Did they talk to the neighbors on 63rd Street about them having a garage next door? There is no garage. Have anybody talked to them?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Do they know that this is happening?
I can't say that they do.
Probably not. There's actually not a requirement to notify neighbors for a combination of lots. Or when they do get around to applying for a building permit to construct a garage for a building inspections department, you wouldn't know if your neighbor applied for a building permit, I guess, to build a garage.
Okay,
So
I'm
it's-
just
yeah,
saying, because this is
right.
a little unique, that's all.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
And the garage will be in line with the other garages on that rear parcel. It won't be next to the house. It will be in line
Right.
with the other residential garages.
Okay. Thank you.
Karen?
Here.
What has been happening on those lots currently? Like, have the kids been like using them, or I mean, do we know what's been going on there lately, or?
Don't know. I mean, the property owner owns both properties.
Oh,
and-
okay, so it's
and
owned by, it's already owned by.
Yeah, they already own
someone.
both.
Purchase wants to combine them.
They wanted to put, because, they don't have access on 62nd,
Mhm.
they wanted to create an access off of 63rd and build a garage, so. They've got to combine them in order to build a garage, otherwise they can't build a garage on an unoccupied lot.
Any other questions?
Vote to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
A second. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. That concludes item 5. We'll move to item 6, sign plan appeal.
Is anybody here for Hobby Lobby? Or? No? What are you folks here for? Maybe we can.
We can get you out of here.
Check. Okay, all right.
I'm just
Oh, just hanging out with us?
new within the last year to West Allis.
Good.
And
All right.
starting to get, interested in what's going on in the community. I don't really have it.
Okay. Oh, thanks for coming. Appreciate that. Yeah.
We have an opening for an alternate on the plan commission if you.
Mayor, would we want us maybe?
7A and 7B.
7B?
Sure.
And maybe
Get you out of here.
yeah. You're welcome to come on up if you wish, yeah.
Sure.
I secretly changed up some of these slides on Corey at the last minute, so, bear
Testing his
bear with us,
resiliency.
yeah. Blame me.
So West Allis Community Child Care, been in operation since 2015. Primary focus is, as you can see, providing child care to 6 weeks to 12 years old. They employ 42 full-time, 4 part-time employees. Hours of operation, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday, and it is on M1 and is currently in the Summit Place area. It's on the east side of that property. As it is existing 15,000 square foot daycare, the proposed expansion would add another 4,000 square feet. Right here is the existing playground, and what they want to do is do another playground similar to this one right here. Just this area right here now is used as the drop-off area.
Drop-off and pick-up.
Drop-off and pick-up area. They're going to take that out. This will be the playground area, the new playground area. Across the street here. As you see, this is a aerial view of it. So this will be the new playground. This will be the old playground area. Also, as part of their expansion, they are wanting to take the first floor kitchen area and laundry room area, which is located here. They will relocate them up here to the second floor. This new area will be converted into classrooms for additional infants and toddlers. Their current capacity is 177. Once it's all said and done, they'll bring the total capacity with the new renovations to 201 children, which is here. Again, new laundry area, new kitchen area, new classroom areas right here. And another part of the expansion will be creation of additional parking spaces. Right now they have 4 dedicated spaces to the daycare center. They are looking to add 6 to 8, which will bring the total from 10 to 12 spaces. Along this way, there will be existing walkway which will lead from the playground area over here to the parking. As you see right here, just another view of the, kind of give you a better view of the proposed new playground area. This parking will also serve as parent pickup and drop off, as well as parking for staff over here.
That wouldn't be designated for
Okay.
staff, that would be primarily just for the parents that are picking up and dropping off, and anybody that's inquiring about us, and maybe that wants to come in for a tour or whatever. But yeah, no, that would be not for staff. Staff would have to be able to park within the rest of the spaces within that lot, which is rather large. I don't know how many spaces they have, but no, staff is as much as parking spots.
Also, I forgot to add, part of the materials used to construct the new playground area be the same as what's existing. Same type of fencing will go around there as ornament, decorative fencing. Rubber playground chips will be put in place of the asphalt surface. And staff recommends approval based on, subject to the following conditions. Looking for just a more detailed plan showing the existing parking lot areas on the 66A2 property. Number of parking stalls used by daycare and pedestrian walkways. A revised floor plan just to kind of add a little bit more detail to the areas that are being changed within the building. And fence and play surface details for the new playground area. Essentially, what kind of fencing will be there, just give us kind of like a materials list and renderings of what the actual fence will look like. Estimated costs submitted to us and surety bond. And that is it.
Questions? Motions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
We'll back up to item 6.
Okay, item 6, keeps going.
That bank again.
Automatic.
That house bank.
You've done. See.
There's like no good way to fix it.
No, that's why I asked. That's why I asked about that door.
I'm like,
So this one is for Hobby Lobby in the West Allis Town Center, and they are requesting a variance. And so just as an overview, when considering if we should provide a variance, the 3 things that are listed in our code to consider are if it will result in a concentration, under concentration of signage, if the proposed signage is unique and of an exceptional design, or if there are site difficulties that require going over the ordinance in order to accommodate that space. Looking at Hobby Lobby, they are permitted 2 wall signs with a combined maximum of 200 square feet. And in their original application, they actually submitted 3 wall signs that was over 300 square feet. So staff responded saying, this is over our requirements, please submit revised plans to fall within our code. And they really did want to have a much larger sign on the front, and so they were given the option that you can apply for that and request a variance, but should you not get approval, you essentially are utilizing all of your allowable square footage for your wall signage. So ultimately, they did submit a wall sign that was 199.8 square feet. I think, or is it 198? I'll double check those numbers, but it's surrounding. So currently, they have this nearly 200 square feet sign on the front, and then they also have signs on the monument signs on 70th Street and on Greenfield. And so their variance request is to have an additional sign, a wall sign, on South 70th Street. That would be 94.7 square feet, which would put them over by 94.5 square feet of their maximum allowance. They, in their request, cited that their typical store signs are much larger than what we've allowed on the front of their store. Their corporate standard is much larger. And that as part of their architectural plans that were approved, they were asked to include this parapet here on the back, and that was an additional cost to them. So they would like to be able to use that space that they put in extra funding for to have a sign on, and also because the building is facing a parking lot rather than Greenfield, they cited that as a site challenge for visibility from the street. So when we were looking at this and looking at it in terms of, you know, how do we determine if we should or should not grant a variance, you know, whether or not this would result in undue concentration of signage, potentially yes, because we'd be setting a precedent to allow more signage than the code allows in other businesses of the shopping center, which, you know, and we have required in the past other businesses to come to not go over their allowable amount, including Ross was one example. The proposed sign is not of any sort of unique or exceptional design that would grant it special allowance, and the site difficulties that they cited, we don't particularly agree are difficulties. The sign is still visible from Greenfield Avenue. They have signage on the monument signs on Greenfield and South 70th. So while we do agree that that rear parapet area would look nice having a sign, we would like it to be in compliance with our code. So for example, they could have a 150 square foot sign on the front, which is pretty similar to what Ross has, and then a 50 square foot sign on the back. So we are recommending denial of this plan.
Move to approve.
To approve the denial?
Mhm.
Or do you wanna?
To approve
Yeah,
the
cause if we
denial.
deny it, then it's an approval, correct?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Recommend denial.
Recommend denial, okay.
Okay.
So you're moving
Recommend to-
approval to recommend.
Recommend
Yes.
denial,
Wait,
yes.
I'm sorry, who was the first one?
Aaron
Aaron.
and John. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Item 8.
Alright, so looking at the BP on Greenfield, the pantry there would like to, the convenience store would like to apply for a Class A license. This is a special use, and there's a public hearing scheduled for this on July 16th. It's pretty, their changes that they're proposing are pretty minor. This soda cooler up here would have 2 of the doors out of 12 dedicated to beer sales. One of these shelves would be dedicated to liquor and wine. And then here behind their cashier, they would have additional, I believe they said pints for sale. So in total, these places, these account for about 45 square feet or 2.25% of the floor area. And otherwise, operations would generally be maintained. And this site is currently operating under an approved site and landscape plan. Overall, the site looks pretty good, so we didn't request them or require them to do any sort of additional site landscape plan along with this request. Staff recommends approval of the special use permit to have a Class A license at 10537 West Creek.
Second.
Motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed? 4-1, motion carries. Aaron. I was just thinking all of you live really close. except Tom. You're not super close.
Mm-mm.
Let's move on to items 9A and 9.
Thank you, Mayor. Millard of Red, White, and Brews on 7127 National Avenue. It's an existing bar who is proposing to add some additional areas, or infill some additional areas with extension of premise, the licensed premise. So basically allowing people to consume a beverage, alcoholic beverage outside the building by extending the licensed premise to include a small area in front of the building along National Avenue, as well as within an existing patio area behind the building. Now I'll admit that this is a dated aerial, it's 2015. If we were to have a 2018 aerial, it would show the rear behind this building being an improved patio area with a fence surrounding it. There is a small parking lot behind the fenced area as well for 3 parking stalls. But so the owner is seeking permission to infill both those areas with licensed premise. This is a street view, well, not really a street view, but a plan view of what some of the building or streetscape updates have been along National Avenue between 70th and 76th Street. Immediately in the area here of 72nd and National. National Avenue's been completely redone with a new paver terrace area, and that's this sort of brown colored designation here. Curb extensions, bike lanes, updated parking areas along portions of National Avenue. Lane configurations have been changed slightly. Which has also been installed. What has also been installed recently has been streetscaping, like street furniture, landscaping, some decorative treatments, bike boxes at some of the intersections. So, playing along that line of improvement, updating the streetscape, new life. Red, White, and Bruise is hoping to sort of latch onto some of that new synergy and offer some seating out in front of their establishment. Initially they were thinking about 4 tables. However, the tables that they were initially scoping for that front area along National Avenue were about 42 inches in diameter, which is a little too large to get 4 tables within an 18-foot area. The type of table that the applicant has since suggested would be much smaller, probably more like a 36-inch diameter, maybe a 20, even smaller 24-inch diameter, more like a bistro table. With a smaller seating arrangement, a smaller footprint, so that it would still allow for the passage of passers-by on the sidewalk without obstructing, a minimum of 3-foot passage by the outdoor dining area. Behind the building, this is already there. So this was built by the previous bar owner, which was Bottoms Up Pub. And when they renovated the bar, it used to be Night Court before that, but when the Bottoms Up renovated it, they put this patio in behind the building with the hopes of someday having an outdoor area behind the building. Well, that was never allowed. As part of the Bottoms Up special use permit, there should be no, resolution specifically states there's no outdoor activity on the sides or the rear of the building. So while this may look perfectly suited for an outdoor area, it's currently not allowed by the current special use, which runs with the property regardless of what bar comes or goes. So Red, White, and Bruise, the current tavern, is hoping that the Plan Commission and the Council will see a favorable, grant favorable approval to not only a few tables out in front along National Avenue, but also behind the building as well. From past public hearings from previous taverns and just conversations with Alderperson Weigel, I understand that there is some tension within the neighborhood. A property owner or two that live south of the alley are opposed to any outdoor use behind the building. That's what I know as far as the rear area. This will go before the Common Council on 16th of July for a public hearing. I haven't had any objections yet to date as far as from the neighborhood, but we may prior to the hearing. There's still time for people to get their comments in. People can also show up to the public hearing on the 16th and state their concerns or comments. Here.
Can you just, I'm not familiar with the building, so
Sure.
can you just show me like where the houses are and compared to where this patio is?
Yep. Let me just take a look here. Hopefully I've got an aerial view.
It's on.
So this is probably the best. It is a 2015
Okay,
aerial,
it's the
but
same
it
one.
does represent the existing uses behind. So 73rd Street is here to the west, National Avenue to the
So
north.
which person was,
I think it's just generally someone that lives behind the space. I'm not sure if it's this property owner here or someone that's, okay,
1716?
okay,
oh, so there's more.
yeah.
If I may,
You
Yes,
may.
Marty.
The bar owner, and to be clear, it's a bar, no restaurant, no food service,
Okay,
so it's not outdoor dining.
right.
The bar owner had said something about possibly wanting to do this last fall. At that time, the neighborhood got a petition together last, I believe, September, and they were like, who do we give it to? It's like, well, he hasn't presented anything, he hasn't asked yet. They were just notified by mail, I believe, they got the letters on Monday about this? Does that
Yeah,
sound
the
right?
public notice was probably fairly recently, right?
So, which is
Yeah.
why you haven't heard anything yet, but as the alderman of the district, I have. She said, who do I give the petition to? I said, you may wanna get a fresh petition addressing the specific question of this application. And, so I expect there to be an organized opposition to at least the extension on the south side, the back side of the premise. I agree with the activation of the street side of the building. There's really no neighbors to, some of the neighbors have some issues. There's a bar, Bronze has live music running till 10 p.m. on Tuesdays and Sundays. Sometimes that's a little loud, but that's live music, it's a whole different thing. But I do know there will be a petition with current occupants and possibly property owners regarding at least the backside of this. I know that's not on you guys, you're looking at the other, the rest of it. And I believe the duplex is up for auction, I think, this week or next week. There's an online auction for the duplex, which is the property immediately to the west of the bar with the gravel lot. That's one tax key, and that's a kind of a small two-two duplex there that's up for online auction, which means typically it's not in very good shape. So what's gonna happen to that, we don't know. But that would be conceivably, so that, I believe, is empty right now. And those people would be looking directly down into that licensed premises in the back. So whoever would live there someday. And the owner has been told from day one that there would be resistance on this stuff in the back. But he's asking.
Was that petition, was the bar owned by someone else at
No,
that
it
time,
was-
or was it this owner?
No, he bought this, and his closing was, he was anticipating, he had put the word out, he was buying it, anticipating he was gonna open it right when National Avenue construction finished last fall. Which
Finished.
didn't. So we're still working. So it was specifically about Eric Millard, Red White.
So are we voting on that back section?
The way we've sort of bundled this thing is it's all together. However, you could separate it if you're in support of one and not the other. That's fine. If you like it all, fine. If you don't like any of it, however you wish. Yeah.
Does he have a plan for that back area besides what's already there? Like, are there any walls, like, to kind of sound?
There's a pretty high fence in the back, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's
accurate.
kind of faded, so it's, with the glare, it might be really hard to see, Aaron. But yeah, there is this 6 foot
It's not
tall
gonna be soundproof.
fence.
Right, okay, but there's,
Yeah.
The special land use already says that this is denied, they don't want that on it.
Well, yeah, the current special use that was designed for bottoms up pub, which also runs with the property for the current tavern, says can't use this. So not even to go out and smoke. I mean, it says no use for smoking on the rear or sides of the building. So what he's requesting tonight is to amend that special use that was designed back in 2015 or so, for an allowance for use of this rear, in addition to what he's asking for in the front, the 3 or 4 tables in front, plus some use of the rear. Yeah, Aaron.
I mean, I personally think we should hold off to see what the neighbor, to get more input from the neighborhood before we move further with that.
That's fine. No, it's
So I'd move to
Motion to
approve
hold it, or
yeah.
with only the first portion.
Uh,
The piece, the front
approve the
area.
front
allow
seating and
some seating out front and
and hold the
Second that.
back. You wanna take those separate, or you wanna take them as one motion?
I think we do. One motion, if that's or one altogether. But yeah,
So just to clear, you're
with the modification,
making the motion to approve the front seating, but not holding the rear
We're holding on
patio.
to the back until we hear more comment from the public, yeah.
Okay.
Who seconded?
Nobody yet. Oh, did you? I missed that. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Me, John.
4-1, motion carries. All right, item 10 is an ordinance amendment.
is related to short-term rentals, so think Airbnb, which, you know, in recent times have gained a lot of popularity. Personally, it's the only way that I travel anymore. And and in 2017, Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, did pass some legislation that addressed short-term rentals. There were some concerns at the state level that that communities were prohibiting short-term rentals altogether, and they thought that would be detrimental to tourism. So that is not allowed for the state. We cannot prohibit them altogether. And so, but we can regulate them. And when we look at our code, we don't address them at all. We have a definition of a tourist home, which is not the same thing as a short-term rental, or as the state calls them tourist rooming homes. So it's confusing because ours sounds the same, but it is not the same. And so the way that our code is written, tourist home defaults as a special use. So if you were a homeowner and you wanted to rent out a room in your house, you'd have to come before this body to get a special use, pay $500, go to Plan Commission, have a public hearing. So every single short-term rental in the community would have to go through a public hearing process, which is really pretty cumbersome and time-consuming and expensive, and probably not the best way to handle that type of situation. And so when we look at what other communities are doing, they are regulating them more through their licensing process. And so some of that includes restrictions about, you know, the property has to be owner occupied before you can have, if you want to have a short-term rental, or you have to keep a guest registry, or you have to do these other things, which are handled through either zoning or licensing, but typically not a special use process. So when we look at our own code, we would like to update some of our definitions. Our definition of bed and breakfast and hotel motel to make it more in alignment with how the state defines it. And then we'd also like to add the short-term rental and tourist rooming house to our code, so neither of those are in there. And in doing that, we would remove our tourist home definition and replace it with tourist rooming house. So looking specifically, we also would like to add these as a permitted use in residential area, residential properties that have 4 or less units. This is consistent with when we trigger special uses on properties anyway, so any multifamily over 4 units is a special use. But otherwise, we feel that the use of the property for a short-term rental is similar in nature to residential. And the reason that these specific code sections are listed are that some of them carry over into the lower ones. So, our RA2 is whatever's in RA1. So we don't need to amend RA2, we only need to amend RA1. Again, replace bed and breakfast and tourist homes with just bed and breakfast under special uses in RA1. And then again, replace the phrase tourist home with tourist rooming house in our parking regulations table to be consistent. So I feel like there was a lot of tourist home rental words, so if that was confusing and you'd like clarification on anything, please let me know.
Anybody have any questions? Aaron?
So is this gonna regulate it kind of like a home business at all? Or is the city of West Allis planning to do something like that, or do we already do it?
So they would be licensed through the health department.
Okay.
They would receive a license to have a tourist rooming house.
Okay.
And then again, we think that's the place where if they wanted, if council wants the, any short-term rental unit to be owner occupied, they could have that as considered as part of the licensing process, and so you wouldn't receive a license unless you met this criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of zoning, we would say it's a permitted use in that district, assuming you meet the licensing qualifications.
Are they gonna be taxed as a business then, though, or as a home?
I think that's another decision that would need to be made, but I believe they could have a rooming tax. So similar to
the
like a hotel,
Hotels.
but not a business tax.
A lot of communities already have room taxes in place. Like we stayed at one in Sturgeon Bay, and they had it attached to it, $9 or whatever.
But
it
it's
was.
not something that Allis has done yet.
Right.
Right. We're eager to get something, changed in the books to reflect, what Katie just presented to you, because, we are starting to get some calls. I mean, I know the health department has fielded some, I think the mayor and, his team downstairs here, and so we just want to give people a clear path of, here's what you need to do.
I make a motion to approve.
And it sounds like you're trying to
Yeah.
make it positive.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
appreciate that
Right.
for somebody who wants to do it.
There's
Because I
apparently
stayed
some
at-
large
I
event
stayed at
coming to Milwaukee
myself,
next
and
year.
I love them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
But we wanna make sure that they're still regulated.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Correct, right. Yep,
We have a
absolutely.
motion. Do we have a second?
Second, oh,
Mr. Chair.
Marty?
Are we differentiating between places that just rent a room and serve food? Because years ago, the bed and breakfast typically included breakfast. The couple who lived in the home could breakfast. But that's not the normal, I think, anymore.
No, it's not.
Correct. And so if a home wanted to be a bed and breakfast, that would be a separate health license?
Yes, that was my
And-
question. I wonder, and I'm wondering why the health department is inspecting all of them, even though they wouldn't have the expertise on, say, fire exits and stuff like that. I mean, are we gonna get bins in this on the structure of the building, and the health department only when you're doing food?
There would be health, building inspections, fire, and then the planning
bringing everybody in on
oversight.
this?
Yeah, it's a joint effort of, where we want to sort of bundle the different departments that have an interest in this and just try to make it as seamless as we can, so it's not like, we don't want to bounce people around from one department to the next, but we want to try to have an organized, game plan for people to follow.
I mean, I know already 2 business owners have spoken to me about this topic.
Yeah.
And so, and I understand that's not up to this body, but we're thinking about charging the hotel room tax,
Mm-hmm.
adding that in. I know the hotels will be happy.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna hire somebody to find all these bed and breakfasts,
Just look at the app.
Yeah. So, and that's one reason why we, from the zoning perspective, would like to have them be permitted uses and
Yeah,
not have them
well, they should be.
regulated otherwise.
there should be a mechanism.
Because the clearer and simpler the process is to get through, the more likely we are to have
They will,
compliance.
yes, yeah.
And so our goal is to get as many units to be in compliance as possible. And so just eliminating the roadblock of a special use process is really gonna help to promote doing it the right way.
Okay, so if someone is letting people stay at their home and not charging them rent, there's a sharing service called Warm Showers that's used by bicycle riders, where there's no money changing hands. They're completely exempt from this.
Yes. I would assume.
I think doesn't our definition indicate for a fee or something, so.
Yes.
We would just go back to our definition and have to, take a look at that. So.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. It was.
Oh, yeah, Brian and
You moved,
Amanda.
or did you second?
Brian.
You moved.
I moved.
Oh,
I can't
sorry.
remember. I second.
Okay.
You seconded, or did you second?
Okay.
Tom moved. Aaron seconded.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, I thought Aaron then said, no, go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, yeah, no, it was Amanda. Amanda moved.
Gotta get your name in the minutes. It's all about that.
All right. All right.
Item 11.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have a slide for this, but if you would, I guess in the staff report, we put together a little illustration, or a write-up on the signage ordinance. So the Downtown Business Improvement District would like to update the downtown's sign ordinance to include changeable message centers. Those are the types of things that you would see in windows, on freestanding signs or wall signs or projecting signs. So the current sign ordinance that they have does allow changeable copy electronic message centers if it's integrated with a freestanding sign, like out in front of City Hall, our monument sign, and then EMCs integrated with that. It would also allow for a message center to be integrated into a projecting sign or a wall sign if it's not more than 35% of the sign face. So in other words, your primary sign in your business is allowed, and there's a certain square footage allowance, but the design requirements indicate that not more than 35% of that wall sign or projecting sign or freestanding sign should be, the TV screen or the EMC. So the EMC needs to take a secondary position under our current sign ordinance. What the improvement, or the bid would like done, and what's been crafted in our ordinance is for them, is to allow changeable copy signs in windows. So as, just as a standalone sign in a window. For instance, a few in the downtown area, the furniture store across the street has a changeable copy sign hanging in their window display. So there's furniture in the background, and they've got a cabinet, a small little cabinet or box. That probably looks something like what's illustrated on page 28. That's has a scrolling message or a moving message or a different animated type of message that indicates the special of the day, the week, or the month, or sales, or what have you. We don't regulate content, so we really don't care what the sign says. But what we do regulate is the image, the design characteristics, light levels, and where things can be located, certain area requirements, and so on. The existing purpose of our sign ordinance that we currently have in place is to preserve the unique historic character of the downtown, protect property values within the city, to reduce visual clutter, establish and promote a clean and attractive environment, and stimulate economic growth and stability, promote health and properly designed business environment, aesthetically complementing development which a sign identifies. Provide for expression of both commercial and non-commercial speech, provide for identification and advertising needs of businesses, safeguard the general public from damage or injury which may be caused by the faulty and uncontrolled construction of signs within the city, protect against hazards to vehicular traffic movement through improper placement of signs. So just with our existing purpose of our sign ordinance, we feel that the addition of the electronic message center signs is getting a little bit too much towards the visual clutter, and we do allow for commercial and non-commercial speech advertising under our current sign ordinance. We do feel that this just adds another level of intensity and clutter to the streetscape, which wouldn't always align with the purpose of our downtown, what our sign ordinance currently says. So we did reach out to the Main Street communities, which is a state organization through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. They do offer us assistance in terms of design assistance and signage assistance, and among other economic development tools and resources to downtowns. There are, I think, over 80 or so Main Street communities in the state, and they were basically indicating that to us that they don't necessarily recommend this style of signage in downtown areas. What they were indicating to me was that there were two sign ordinance communities, Fort Atkinson and Viroqua, which do allow electronic message centers. Viroqua, though, does not allow this style of signage in their historic district. Now, while we don't necessarily have a historic district, our downtown is just the central business district. I would argue that it is a unique district, and there is a theme, I think, that the downtown's trying to achieve, and that it is preserving character, promoting economic development. They do a great job in what they do, and the different events that happen in the downtown area here, the support they provide to local businesses. They hosted a workshop today on economic development. But so while I think their intent is, and their heart is in the a positive direction, they want to support their businesses. From our staff perspective, we feel it's just going to be too much visual intensity and more additional clutter that's really not needed in the downtown area. However, if the Plan Commission or Council, this is going to go before Common Council, don't agree with us, we have crafted a draft ordinance to hopefully best regulate these things. But again, we still feel that this isn't something that belongs in our downtown district. We offer other signage options. We also do currently allow electronic message centers in the downtown, but it has to be integrated within a different type of signage. So that's our recommendation. Yeah, so electronic message centers, as the bid would like, would be internal to the building. So these would not, what they really want is to pretty much continue with what they currently have in the downtown signage ordinance, the allowance for, EMCs and freestanding signs and projecting signs. However, to add the element of window EMCs. And so as a window EMC would be part of the window area, be on the inside of the window, inside the interior of the building, facing outward. We've created some new definitions, so anything within 2 feet of that glass internally would be considered a window sign. So if you're going to hang anything within 2 feet of that inside of that glass, it's considered a sign. So if you're going to hang a TV set or something like that.
Open signs that light up?
Yeah, that's a little bit different. So that's not necessarily considered some of these do have variations where you can have.
What's the difference?
They can OPEN, yeah. So, So that, in other words, the signage, the message that you're displaying, whether it's open or whether it's
Chips,
flavor of the month or it has to, as recommended in our if this ordinance were to go through, it'd have to hold for 3 seconds before changing. But again, we just feel that the window sign allowance for EMCs is maybe just going a little too far and not only distracting, but just aesthetically, in our opinion, not what a downtown district, at least in our, if we're talking Times Square, maybe that's one thing, but I think we're talking West Allis and our unique downtown. Is this what's right for us? And we don't believe it is.
Aaron,
I agree with staff's recommendation.
is this a voting item or just a nod?
However, Plan Commission wishes. It is going to go before the Common Council.
You want to endorse
And
staff's?
if you wish to endorse our recommendation or not, or just say,
So
what,
we'll-
punt it
we'll
to
take that as a
council,
motion.
that's an option, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion from Aaron, second from
Okay.
Brian.
All right.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, you had,
All in Durbin Weigel?
If I may. First of all, the bid would like to find some way to make this happen. I spoke to Diane, the director, today. We've been working on it for quite some time. And I just have a couple questions. Are we allowing this in the rest of the city?
well, both EMCs are currently allowed everywhere in the city, including the downtown.
Oh, but the window,
Yeah.
we're talking about the windows, EMCs in the windows. Are they allowed in the rest of the city?
No.
Okay, because then there needs to be some sort of enforcement, because I see them a lot of places in our city. Second of all, I don't understand how it's not distracting and cluttering when it's on a projecting sign or a exterior wall sign, but somehow it is distracting and cluttering when it's, if it's on the front of the building, it's not distracting or cluttering, but if it's on the inside of the window, it is distracting and cluttering?
If it's part of an existing sign that one would otherwise have on their building, whether it's projecting or freestanding sign, there's an allowance, whether it's in the downtown or
I
citywide,
understand
that
that.
integrates
I don't
something within
understand
that.
how it's not distracting when it's outside of the building as approved as part of this approved sign. No one's asking us to, right now with this 20% coverage rule, I don't know if you guys are all familiar with that, and it's not, look, so that's 2 window panes. So 20% of one, 20% of the other is the max coverage that's allowed.
Right.
Okay, so you can't do 40% in one and 0 in the other. So we're not asking for an exemption above that. This is not over and above that 20%.
Right.
This would be like replacing, in my case, a Miller Lite neon with a sign. It might say Miller Lite now, it might say Blue Moon a minute from now. With the 3-second dwell.
Sure.
I understand we don't want galloping horses or lightning bolts or whatever. I just don't, this came about because those signs used to be really expensive. And they've gotten very cheap now. And I understand some of them look like
So I think that's part of the issue.
Yeah, it's
When
gonna
a,
look
when
cheap.
an, when an EMC is on a sign that's a monument sign or a wall sign or projecting sign, it goes through an approval process.
Yes.
But none of these would have to go through that process, and so those signs are made of good quality. We ensure that they look nice and are well suited for that community and that the character of the neighborhood. But when someone can go buy something for $20 on Amazon and throw it in the window, it's not gonna look nice. And if that's all down the entire street of downtown, our downtown is not gonna look as nice.
And so let's go back to the Main Street recommendation, okay? So
Mhm.
the Main Street people want every downtown to be like, say, Cedarburg or Egg Harbor or something like that, and that's just not the reality of the world,
Mhm.
okay? I look at other vibrant communities, you know, they're allowed, and I'm not saying that I know the answer. Maybe we test, maybe we do regulate them and inspect them and permit them, and a group of citizens weigh in on them sign by sign, like we do on exterior signage. Get ready for some long nights. But I guess, you know, we've been working on this for a long time, and I was hoping we'd get a better outcome than this, than no. I was hoping we could find some way to find an answer on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, so our recommendation is to deny the request. However, you know, we'll go to council. Council can take in, consider things. I mean, we have drafted an ordinance that should common council want to accept or approve or pass, we feel
So
it best regulates some of the things we're talking about. We still think, though, it's gonna create a lot of bright lights and
So you have
intensity.
You have a parallel ordinance with a 3-second dwell, so it's not like flashing.
Right.
Do you have a parallel ordinance drafted? I'm sorry if I didn't look at it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Is it in here?
Was it linked in,
It's linked, yeah, and so basically, some of the criteria within that is that, so each business, I mean, if council should pass this ordinance, each business could have a changeable copy window sign, not to exceed more than 20% of the window space. It has to be mounted, you know, inside the building, and if it's within 2 feet of the interior of the glass, it's considered a window sign. If it's beyond that, we don't see it, you know, yes.
Can we require some regulation on it then too, in that ordinance?
Sure,
So that
in
if
fact,
it is passed by
if you, yeah,
council?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. If you have a second, I can probably call it up here real quick. Leave the mouse here or something. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I understand, like
Yeah.
a full motion video might be distracting. And, I mean, we went through this with the rope lighting, you know, and we have an ordinance about the light not spilling out into the neighborhood and all that. I don't know how, they're typically not very bright. I do remember when Family Video first went in there, their glass column light was really bright, and we made them dial that back.
Mhm.
Or did I just get used to it?
It may have, yeah.
And I think this falls on the similar plane of rope lighting, which is no longer permitted.
No, yeah,
Because it doesn't
Yeah.
look nice.
Yeah,
and
it looks trashy.
And so do wall, window EMC signs, quite frankly.
So this is the bids request, just to sort of familiarize yourself with that, but,
Well, some of them look nice. I mean, if they're fine enough grain, they're not real pixely, you know. And the technology's getting there eventually. People just be hanging TVs in their windows, and you plug in something and it'll say happy hour or nachos or Nike shoes 20% off, whatever the store's selling.
Yes, and I mean,
Yeah, I think we're fighting the
just because
technology.
technology allows for it, doesn't mean that it's what's best for the neighborhood, so, and there are considerations to be made beyond just what is possible.
Yes.
Well, and windows are supposed to be to look in and outside of a business.
That's why it's a 20% coverage rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's
That's
only
so-
20%.
so we have, I mean, so this is the actual draft ordinance, which is ready to be, you know, passed or amended or denied, however council chooses. But so, there's some updated definitions of what a changeable copy sign is, what a flashing sign means. Basically, for the purpose of the sign ordinance, displays at intervals of 3 seconds or more.
So that would mean no scrolling, no fading,
Right.
no moving left to right.
It's pretty much just, here's here's what you see,
For at least
and
three
then it's gonna
signs.
change,
Should be up
yeah.
for 3 days.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So the definitions part is being updated. And then we get into prohibited signs and lighting. This is an existing section with the existing ordinance. It's just being updated to indicate more or less that, you know, there's gonna be, we don't want blinking lights, and we don't want strobe lights, we don't want rope lights, or this LED kind of diode lighting that you see around windows and so on. Then we get into the illuminated sign section, and we have some brightness limitations that we're introducing to our signage ordinance, which aren't there today. Shouldn't exceed more than 3.3 foot candles over ambient lighting conditions. There's something I think that if council does seek to pass this, I think we should sort of indicate also a little further in here about how we're gonna measure the ambient, you know, not only the ambient light conditions, but.
I'll be honest, I don't know
yeah.
what that means. Are you
Right.
talking about demonstration? What point?
Well, there's gonna be, what I would recommend if council so chooses to pass this would be for an explanation of how it should be measured and with what type of device. It's just not in here, and I advise that be done.
I don't wanna get too far off our agenda item.
Yep.
Either.
Sure. Interchangeable copy signs, it just indicates, you know, the area allowance, for a freestanding sign, for window or changeable copy signs. So the freestanding sign really isn't changing. When it's used part of a freestanding or projecting sign, it shouldn't exceed 35% of the sign's area. However, if it's part of a window area, that it shouldn't exceed 20% of the window area. Only one allowed for a freestanding, only one's allowed per property. For a window sign, only one's allowed per storefront. So in some cases, you may have more than one business or tenant or storefront in a building. So each business that faces the street or faces the, you know, has a window on the ground floor could have a changeable copy sign. If in the case of a corner double street frontage, only one's allowed. So if you have the insurance company on the corner of, you know, 72nd and Greenfield, you can't put a changeable copy in each you know, frontage. You pick the frontage you want to display in. And just going on, so when used as part of window projecting signs, you know, it just sort of clarifies some existing points with freestanding signs. Projecting or window signs, when used as part of a projecting or as part of a window, refer to the specific requirements of the projecting or window sections. But then it goes on to say, you know, signs may be double-faced, it has to be permanently installed or located, illuminated signs subject to the lighting requirements, and sign prohibitions about blinking and flashing. Window signage shall be located in the interior side of the storefront or glass. Changeable copy signage shall not be allowed along an alley frontage. So it's got some teeth should council choose to pass it, but I guess just on the very basis or principle of the style of sign that the bid is asking to be used within window areas, we're not jumping up and down as a planning department.
Well, I would still suggest that they're not used, but if common council does decide to use it, I would say that we should have the signs come before the board then at least.
Okay.
We do have a motion and a second in front of us right now that we were just about to vote on. Is that still?
Yep.
Okay, is there any other discussion then? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. And we'll need a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.